Hello, and welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum 11. This is the first panel in this room, and we hope will bring luck to the rest of them. I'm George Dikaios, currently a Marie Curie Fellow at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and I will be chairing this panel titled From Green to Blue Transition, the Protection of the Sea. Allow me to introduce you to our esteemed members of the panel. To my right, Eva Douzinas, President of the Rauch Foundation and co-founder of NGO Catheti. Elisabeth Lipiatou, Head of Unit, Director General for Communication Networks, Content and Technology of the European Commission. Lawrence Yanovitch, Founder and CEO of the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund Network. Aspasia Pastra, Assistant Professor of Sustainability, Governance and Management at the World Maritime University. And Panos Zachariadis, Technical Director of Atlantic Bulk Carriers and member of the Board of Directors of the Hellenic Chamber of Shipping. As evident, the backgrounds of our panelists are very diverse, and each of them approach the protection of the seas and ocean, including myself, in a very different way. So I am certain that the discussion will follow will be very interesting. From green to blue, however might this be interpreted, for example, the decarbonization of shipping, the ocean biodiversity protection, and of course, the whole blue economy that will support the greening of the blue transition, allow us to consider a very broad array of questions to be answered. And, Aspasia, I'm starting with you, to ask you what is the green transition in maritime affairs and how it is perceived from a university that has been established under the United Nations.
Thank you very much, George. I didn't know that I was the first. When we talk about green transition in the shipping sector, we talk about decarbonization of the shipping sector. And it's not only about technologies, it's a complicated, with ambitious target, framework. And this framework has been set by the International Maritime Organization, which is the regulatory body of the world maritime sector. So there, 176 countries, on a consensus-based approach, they take all the decision for the maritime sector. So this green transition in the shipping sector and this governance framework is comprised of three basic pillars. The first one is the strategy of the International Maritime Organization, which set the targets. And the targets are 70%. We will reduce the greenhouse emission by 2040, and we will have full decarbonization, zero greenhouse emissions by 2050, a very ambitious target. And the operationalization of this strategy will be achieved through different measures. The first measure is the net zero framework, which was adopted in April 2025 by countries. And this is a pricing mechanism. For the ships, the more they emit, the more they are supposed to pay. But in October 2025, there was a general tension at the International Maritime Organization. From the one side, we had the very climate-friendly countries like Norway and EU, and on the other side, we had the flag states, and they couldn't come into a compromise. So we will negotiate this pricing mechanism in October 2026, all the countries. But it doesn't mean that the green transition is not there. We have many technical regulations and measures, like the Energy Efficiency Index for ships. We have operational measures, like the Carbon Intensity Indicator, where the ships are categorized from A to E, based on the number of carbons they emit. And apart from these regulations, we have Pillar 2, which is about the alternative fuels. We are in an alternative fuel transition. We see dual fuel vessels to be in operation or to be ordered, and this means vessels that consume traditional oils, but in parallel with methanol or ammonia. We see electric batteries, especially in coastal ferries in countries like Norway. We see discussions about nuclear power. And apart from the alternative fuels, we have all this energy-efficient technology on board the vessels, on the hull optimization. We have wind rotors on board the vessels, and so many other technical measures. And lastly, we have the Pillar 3, which is the amazing network of all the stakeholders. It's the flag states, who have to enforce the regulations for the ships that are registered in their flags. We have the national governments that have to set the policies, especially for ports, to enable this green transition. We have the ports that lack still the infrastructure for green transition, but we hope we will, by 2050, will reach it. And we also have the shipping companies, we have the ship owners that are in a wait-and-see position to see what will happen with the alternative fuels. And we have also shipping companies, of course, they're taking fantastic energy efficiency measures in their companies. So it's a multi-layered governance framework in the shipping sector.
Thank you, Aspasia, for giving us this image. It's very interesting how it works. And of course, your contribution leads me to Panos and his experience from his participation to the International Maritime Organization meetings. So Panos, what is your view on the net zero framework that is being discussed currently in the IMO?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I just want to remind everybody today is Earth Day, if you didn't know. So this panel is totally appropriate, Planet Day. So as Aspasia said, the IMO has, International Maritime Organization, has come up with the main measure to reduce the emissions from ships, and that's the net zero framework. And it wasn't finally adopted. It's been delayed for 1 year. Mainly because of the opposition from Mr. Trump in the United States, which was threatening the other countries at the IMO. This is unprecedented. Even the delegates personally and their families, and therefore they achieved the objective to at least delay it. But to tell you the truth, first of all, whatever I say is my personal opinions, nothing to do with the organizations I belong to. The net zero framework was a compromise. It ended up being a very, very complicated regulation to practically apply by shipping companies and ships. In the attempt to compromise, they made it so complicated. It was very difficult, but to make it easy to understand, the bottom line is, if you burn fossil fuels, you pay. If you don't burn fossil fuels, you don't pay and you might have some gain. So what are the other fuels? The other fuels are what we call green fuels, green hydrogen, green ammonia, and green methanol. Even biofuels, they're not sure if they will accept as fuels that you don't have to pay. So in my research, I found out that those green fuels, quote unquote, are not so green. And this is my main issue. Number one, they're not so green. Number two, they're nowhere to be found. So in other words, the ships will just pay, and every year the penalty will become more and more. I don't know if you want me to talk about why they're not so green now, or
maybe in the next round.
Maybe in the next round, yeah. We'll explain what the problem is with those fuels.
Thank you so much. And what I'm keeping from what you said is the difficulties with the practicalities and whether green is green or is not. And now from the IMO to the European Union, Elisabeth, what do you think is the way forward to achieve cooperation on the protection of the seas in the EU, and especially through the twin transitions, i.e. the green and the digital transitions?
It is a fact that green and digital transitions are European Union's top priorities for climate neutrality, to boost competitiveness, and also to protect the seas. Today, I would like to deep dive into the blue digital transition, a transition that encompasses the digital and the green, but tailored to the marine environment. So the blue digital transition is today the shock of the new for the ocean. It transformed the way we are reading the ocean, from a vision fragmented and delayed, now to a real-time observation of a system we can understand and predict. from an episodic observation to a continuous awareness, and from retrospective analysis to near real-time decision-making. Europe demonstrated, I think, its determination to this twin transition for the ocean through its support, certainly through two international conventions and treaties, but also with Europe's Ocean Pact, a strategy to protect, restore, and boost blue economy. The Digital Decade framework and European-funded programs like Digital Europe, Horizon Europe, Copernicus, supporting, amongst others, AI, robotics, remote sensing, and supercomputers. Let me illustrate this with some examples, such as, for instance, autonomous robotic surveillance of the ocean through AI-enabled underwater vehicles, or the European Digital Twin of the Ocean, a virtual representation of the ocean, which explores data in real time and what-if scenarios to understand trade-offs and guide decision-making. Because it is true, we cannot protect what we cannot see. Today, satellites detect oil spills, algal blooms, illegal fishing, autonomous sensors track temperature, acidification, pollution. AI predicts ecosystem status, and cloud infrastructures allowing constant updating. It is the ocean connects us all, is a common good, and its protection requires cooperation, trust, and shared responsibility. This is where ocean science diplomacy becomes indispensable. Science, research, and innovation becomes a bridge, allowing countries to share data, create shared rules, work together, and build trust, also in complex geopolitical contexts, such as, for instance, this of the Eastern Mediterranean today. In an age of geostrategic rivalries, science becomes a critical asset, translating into impact, competitiveness, and geopolitical relevance. And I believe that today we have an opportunity to protect the ocean by combining the blue digital transition with ocean diplomacy.
Thank you. Very interesting, and thank you for delineating the EU's contribution to the blue transition, the digital and the green transition. And of course, I need to stress out that we have to have always in mind that we cannot protect what we cannot see. Because we might be seeing this issue or challenge that we have in front of us, Eva, I'm coming to you. And reading your work on fish farming, an issue increasingly connected to sustainability and blue economy, I was wondering if you could explain to us what does sustainability mean in relation to fish farming.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Dikaios, and thank you to the Delphi Economic Forum for allowing me to be here today. That's a really good question because, actually, I was recently at the EU DJ Mari Commission and a meeting with the DG Environment, and what came up out of that was that there's no definition of sustainable aquaculture, despite the fact that it's in the funding for aquaculture, it requires it to be for sustainable aquaculture. And aquaculture is a really broad term. It includes, it's probably the broadest term for everything from plant farming in the sea, like seaweed, bivalve farming, and traditional lagoon farming like we have here in Mesolongi and Ambrakikos, to all the way to the most destructive form, which is the farming of carnivorous fish in open net pens, which unfortunately is 80% of what we do here in Greece. And I think what the sustainability at its core is really 4 key points. It's environmental integrity, it's economic viability, it's social fairness, and it's adequate regulation to ensure that it's meeting those first 3 points. And with fish farming, a lot of time, I think not just with fish farming, but with many greenwashed issues, we see that that we're often looking at a superficial problem. So, yes, it's a fact that the seas are emptying of fish, and there's a real problem with overfishing, and there's also a real and the EU has a goal of food security, but what we don't always see, and at a very high level, it makes sense. Well, then farming fish is a solution to both food security and creating more fish. But when we take more fish from the sea to create a lesser amount of fish, then it has a net negative protein effect on our oceans, and we're taking the very base of the food chain out of our systems. Today, over 30% of fish is taken out of our sea, wild fish are taken out of our seas to create fish meal and fish oil to feed a much smaller number of carnivorous fish like sea bream, sea bass, and salmon. And that's happening at a cost to the Greek coastlines. Today, about 9,800 stremata, or 980 hectares of Greek coastline is used for farm fishing, but in a law that was formed in 2011 that almost no one knows about because we've done 2 national polls and still only about 10% of Greeks are even aware that this 15-year-old law exists, that's going to expand industrial fish farming from 980 hectares to 24,000 hectares of coastal land. So that's equivalent to about 24,000 football fields of coastal waters are going to be used for industrial fish farming in Greece. And we just, and the communities affected were never really adequate, were never even, and oftentimes not even aware that it's happening until well after the public deliberation period has ended. And even if they did know, on that first day, they would get a 1,000-page environmental impact statement with dense scientific data, text that would require a specialist that they would have no access to because there's very, very few people within Greece that can understand that type of aquaculture science. So, the element of social fairness is really lacking, and I think that in the next section I'll kind of get into why regulation is so critical to ensure that the parts of sustainable aquaculture are really met.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very interesting to have always in mind how something we consider it might be sustainable, it is not after all. Mm-hmm. And this brings me to Lawrence and sustainable investing. And I wanted to ask you how investors can consider to incorporate more nature, and specifically marine nature, as we speak about the protection of the seas, in their activity. What would this mean for the protection of the seas?
Well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Yanovitch. I'm the CEO of the One Planet Sovereign Fund Network. Just as some background, we were launched in 2017 with President Emmanuel Macron, and we have now 18 sovereign wealth funds, 19 asset managers, 13 private equity funds for $47 billion of assets under management, all with the investment belief that integrating climate issues into investment decision will actually improve financial performance. So there's a compelling underlying economic imperative to move in this direction. And I'm very happy to report that we'll be releasing data. We already released data last year that 69% of sovereign wealth funds believe that integrating climate issues into their decision-making will improve their financial performance, and that is heading north. Now, the bulk of our work has really focused a lot on energy and decarbonization of the global economy, but particularly by investing in energy and encouraging companies to make that transition. The blue economy is new for us. We are just, and that's why I'm all ears, absorbing, and I'm so grateful to be here in Greece because you are at the epicenter in your leadership around these issues. 20% of shipping is led out of this country, and so I think we just need to learn more about the way you're thinking about it, but just the way we're thinking about nature, these large investment funds need big scale investments. So we're looking right now at forests, regenerative agriculture, and then for the blue economy, the transition of the maritime industry, as well as looking at coral, mangroves, coastal areas as infrastructure and protecting the resilience of the coastlines.
Thank you, and thank you for being optimistic and giving us an optimistic point of view and being optimistic for the future. I mean, it's always quite difficult to have optimism in a room when you discuss climate and environmental protection, because unfortunately we see that things are usually slower than we expect or want, which is always also a problem. I mean, some things take much more time than we think that they will. This brings me back to Aspasia, and I wanted to ask you to give us your lights on the agreement on biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, what we name BBNJ agreement, which was very recently entered into force, and what would it be its contribution to the blue transition, the ocean protection, and of course, what is the role of technology in it?
Okay, thank you for the question. Maybe I first start by saying that 63% of our oceans does not belong to any nation. It's beyond 200 nautical miles, it's beyond the exclusive economic zone of every nation. So we never had a regulatory framework for these areas to protect the marine biodiversity. And now we live a historic transition. After 2 decades of negotiation between all the countries at the United Nations level, on 16th of January 2026, just a few months ago, the BBNJ agreement entered into force. And this is the agreement for the protection of marine biodiversity in areas that is global commons, do not belong to any specific nation. And it is a historic milestone. It is based on 4 pillars. It has specific measures, how to, for example, to design a marine protected area in the oceans and to protect marine biodiversity there, what environmental impact assessments you have to do based on specific scientific criteria, how we have the sustainable use of marine genetic resources. And marine genetic resources is all the marine life that has some economic value and optimally can become medicine or cosmetic. So now, if a company comes and the marine genetic resource turns it to a medicine, then there is a fund and you have to give back to the community some financial benefits and non-financial benefits. An important parameter of this BBNJ agreement is the transfer of technology, where there is a mechanism that the least developed nations, they have to do an assessment on the technology they need, so the developed countries be able to provide. And this way we create an equity. It's about democratization of our oceans. And apart from the BBNJ, we see silent, revolutionary transformation taking place with the robots we have underwater. So, for example, in our oceans, we have 10,000 Argo floats, which is robots that go underwater for 10 days, and then they come to the surface and they collect so much data about the salinity, the temperature of the oceans, biochemical also parameters. So we have 4,000 underwater technologies that all around the world that they operate. Besides, we have underwater technologies that map the seafloor. Till now, we have mapped 28%. Hopefully, by 2030, we will be able to reach 50% and create the Google map of the ocean, let's say. And these technologies also will help us to discover new species, new marine life. Until now, we have only explored 10% of the marine species that exist. We have only identified only 250,000 marine species, but the 90% is still missing, because with these technologies, we have the opportunity to go to depth down to 10,000 meters, which is the deepest edge of the ocean. So now it's the first time in history that we have the opportunity to know more about the deep ocean, because till now we knew more about the Mars and less than the ocean. Now technologies will give us this opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for describing us this new framework and action, of course. it is super important for the ocean protection, and how it will probably lead to innovative and robotic action. And staying on the broader theme of technology, I was wondering, Panos, are there any new technologies that can help us decarbonize shipping if the end goal is this?
Not available at present, but we hope they'll be available very soon. The bottom line is that we don't have anything right now to decarbonize shipping, because I said before, those alternative fuels are in many cases worse than diesel. If you look at them, their carbon effect, their lifetime carbon effect. So we hope that there will be new technologies, and to be specific, one for the around the next decade is the 4th generation nuclear. This is not the nuclear most people know. This is not Chernobyl and Fukushima. It's small molten salt reactors, particularly powered by thorium, which becomes uranium inside the reactor, so you don't have uranium transferred from one place to another. Extremely safe. There is no possibility for any serious accidents because they don't operate under pressure. But I'm not going to go into that too much. But that's something we hope is going to be available. They're going to be small. They could potentially even replace ships' engines in the next 10 to 20 years. The other thing is we need better batteries. Because it's very important to be able to use the renewable electricity that we produce in an efficient manner. And the most efficient manner is either you direct that renewable electricity to the grid so people can charge their electric cars, or you use batteries for other transportation means like ships. Right now, the batteries that we have, the best battery, they're very heavy and they don't hold too much energy, and therefore they're used by small ships in small distances, but cannot be used by international shipping. So I would wish that more research money goes into that area so we can have good battery for ships, because the alternative, what the IMO and EU are pushing right now, is those green fuels. This is a total waste of renewable energy, which is precious, because you use that renewable energy to make those green fuels, those liquid fuels, you burn them in a ship's engine, 60% of their energy goes up the stack as heat. So you waste this renewable energy by trying to make this green fuel. So the precious renewable energy we have should be used as such, as electricity, and not trying to make other things from it and have so much waste in the meantime. I don't know if we're going to have a third round. Are we? Maybe not. Just to say very fast that the problem with these green fuels is that they originate from green hydrogen, and the EU and many other countries are directing funds into green hydrogen projects, and then they find out that they are not so sustainable, and many projects have stopped. And the reason is that to make green hydrogen, you need huge amounts of renewable electricity. Just for shipping, to make green ammonia, let's say, if you want to replace fossil fuels with green ammonia, which is green, deadly, but green, you need the total production of renewable electricity of the planet just to make the liquid fuels for ships, 70% of which is going to be wasted, as I said. So there is many issues that don't make sense into this, and that's why we need the new technologies I mentioned before.
Thank you so much. And this is what I said earlier. I mean, we still need research to be put in all these initiatives because we are still in the beginning of this transition. and we don't know where it will lead us. I'm not yet still convinced about the nuclear power, but I'm open to change my mind. We'll see. But because we exactly need more R&D, Lawrence, I'm coming back to you, and I wanted to ask you how to speak for blue economy and the technologies that will support it to investors. What is there to do with all the competing interests that exist?
Competing interests from among all the different stakeholders.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, one of the challenges large-scale investors face is they're looking for big tickets, and yet a lot of these new technologies are at the forefront, and they need experimental capital. So we've been starting a conversation with family offices who have very interested catalytic capital to be able to support that kind of innovation. And then once the innovation is there, then it can be scaled.
Thank you. That was very quick. I mean, you have more time if you want to add something, but...
No, I was going to circle back to Panos. So the whole issue on standards, and thank you, I was very edified by what we were saying, because we spent some time on hydrogen, clean hydrogen. A lot of our members were very interested in scaling it, and we saw this as a challenge, as having a standard. So we started a dialogue with the Hydrogen Council and the ISO to get behind a standard that could really source, because in terms of cross-border trade, because every country calculates it differently. But one thing investors can do, and I think it's kind of a missing piece of the puzzle, is investors can get behind standards. And so what we need to do is to ferret out standards that are applicable across jurisdictions, and particularly in this sector, and some of the points you were making about sustainable fisheries. Don't forget the investor community. The investors' standards create value, economic value. And for that, you need the kind of dialogue that we're having here, but probably, a little further on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. And this gives me also, this leads me to my next question to Eva. And another topic that came up indirectly is governance. Mm-hmm. That we have, all these different frameworks that we have either at the European Union or internationally or nationally. So what does sustainability mean if there are no specific limits and definitions, and how can we incorporate these challenges into our governance systems?
And I think that really feeds into the need for new research and also the AI tools that you were mentioning, because I do see a lot of hope that I think that the new technology tools that we see coming out can help a lot with governance. The key parts of governance that I see are needed are knowledge and up-to-date research. Today, decisions are being made on research from the 1990s. I was in a conversation yesterday where the representative of the industry was using data from the 1990s to describe the footprint of aquaculture, which was about 1/100th of what it is today before the expansion. And we also need clear limits, environmental limits. We need independent oversight that's not connected to the industry. Today in Greece, under the POAI law, the very industry itself will oversee it itself. So we have entire areas where there's one single overseer, and that's a representative of the company that's set up the fish farms there. And then we need real consequences when there's violations. For example, today in Greece, about 1 in 4 or almost 1 in 3 fish farms is abandoned. There's about a 3,000 to 5,000 euro fine if you abandon your fish farm. It costs around 200,000 euro to remove that abandoned fish farm. So that's why there's 135 abandoned fish farms across the country. There's literally no limits. We analyzed about 15 environmental impact statements, and in 100% of the cases, there's at least one measure that predicts severe environmental damage, and not a single one of these environmental impact statements has been rejected. And given that there's no legend included in the environmental impact statement, how does a community understand what the numbers they're reading mean? So we really need consequences. We need independent oversight. We need people who are knowledgeable to understand what they're reading. We need a desire to look beneath the surface. I think besides greenwashing from overusing the term sustainability, I believe there's also something like economic washing, where there's a promise of jobs and there's a promise of export money, and we really need to look beneath those promises as well, because today in fish farming, there's not been one single new job in Greece for over 22 years. There's actually negative jobs, and that doesn't even include all the jobs lost in fishing. In just the area of Ambrakikos, there were 2,000 fishermen for the natural aquaculture lagoon before the fish farms went in, and at the very mouth of one of the most protected areas in Greece. And since then, the amount of fish being able to produce in the natural lagoon has shrunk so much that it went from 2,000 fishermen to 15 fishermen. So we can't, and one of the biggest arguments is that this is such an economic boom, but in fact, the companies are going continuously bankrupt. The largest company in Greece, Avramar, owes over 500 million to the Greek banks and is being sold for less than half of its loans to those banks. And so, are we really looking? We've got to look below this, beneath the surface. It's not. We can't look at. Yes, it produces fish, but at what cost to nature? Yes, it produces a few jobs, but it hasn't produced one, despite hundreds of millions of subsidies from the EU in over 22 years. Like, you could give 50,000 euro to a store in town and it would hire 4 or 5 people or more. So, does this make sense for Greece on a long-term basis? The fish, 80% of the fish leave Greece. With the POI, we'll have 200,000 tons of nutrient waste in the oligotrophic seas of Greece, and a sea that has, that's the ecosystem depends on it being nutrient-free. So, we really need regulation to not just look at the surface-level promises.
Thank you, Eva, for this. Very interesting, and I keep that we still maybe need to have consequences when we do not, follow the laws or something like that, or the frameworks that we have. Yeah. Thank you. And last but not least, Elisabeth, I'm coming back to you to give us this picture in an all-encompassing subject and very close to my heart, diplomacy, and especially science diplomacy. Based on your expertise, how do you think science diplomacy and international cooperation can help us move forward in the field of ocean protection?
Okay, first of all, we all agree we need more research and innovation. We have important questions to reply. We need results. So at the EU, as you know, we invest in a big way on research and innovation, and we hope not only now, but in the future in an even bigger way. So, but beyond this, let's all agree, research and innovation, science, offers a natural evidence-based platform for engagement. It allows countries to work together on shared challenges, monitoring, warming waters, managing fisheries, even when political dialogue is difficult. And in this sense, science is not only a tool for knowledge, it is a tool for trust. Today, the European Union, through the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters, and its support to open access systems such as Copernicus Marine Service, is acting as an important facilitator for cooperation. We believe that shared data, shared monitoring systems, digital twins of the ocean, research infrastructures, including oceanographic boats, create channels of dialogue, and which remain open even when times are difficult politically. In a way, ocean science diplomacy becomes more than an environmental cooperation. It becomes a bridge linking sustainability with security, science with policy, and ultimately nations with one another. As we have a new EU framework for science diplomacy, very, very new actually, and the EU, as part of it, the EU will facilitate, amongst others, the establishment of a Mediterranean Science Diplomacy Center and strengthen international science diplomacy dialogue with key partners. So, let us therefore invest not only in protecting our seas, but in the partnership that makes such protection possible. I argue that we have a strategic opportunity to connect digital tools that informs, blue policies that guide, and science diplomacy that binds. Let's connect also blue digital transition with science diplomacy, and we, all of us, really have a role to play on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll keep what you said in the beginning. Science is a tool of trust. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time for a third round or final reflections. So I'll wrap up this session. What I want you to keep from the session is that we need more research and innovation, more research and development, and to work together, not alone. All the different sectors, we need to come together in good faith and find ways to protect our oceans and the planet in general. Thank you very much.